The immediate thought, and you're going to laugh at this, the immediate thought was I would fucking die in the streets. I was like, I thought I was big and strong. I had a gas tank. I was so exhausted by the end of that 5 minutes. The guy just got up and walked away. And I was like, dude, there's no fucking way. I was like, if anyone in the streets were to challenge me right now and just had a little bit of training, I would die. Like there wouldn't even be a fight.
Hello, friends. Thank you for tuning into this week's episode of the Mayn Idea Podcast, where today I have the pleasure of sitting down with Travis Motl. If you want to see this show grow in 2024 and hear from more incredible and epic guests, please take 30 seconds and leave a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify. It's so easy to do, and it helps tremendously with organic growth, which is one of my number one goals for this year. I want this show to grow because the people that listen to it organically share it with other people that are like-minded. The ratings help so much with visibility, and they place this show in front of other people who are listening to podcasts on human performance, jiu-jitsu, and strength and conditioning. So those of you that have left a 5-star rating, I cannot thank you enough. And those of you that are about to do it right now, hats off to you. Much appreciated. Travis Motl is a Navy veteran, jiu-jitsu practitioner, and the host of the Elbows Tight podcast that explores the stresses and struggles of getting started in jiu-jitsu. There's a link to his show below, so feel free to check it out. I'm sure that he would also love a 5-star rating. At the end of the day, I hope that you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. Without further ado, Travis Motl. Dude, I can't believe that you just solved this for me. This has been like, dude, I've been like in the weeds on Reddit with the Zoom PodTrack crew and like just like trying to figure this out. This is exactly what I want. Dude. Now I can hear everything. The sound is like so on point. This is perfect.
No, that's great,
Thank
man.
you.
No problem, no problem. That's what I'm here for, man. I try to help as many people as possible, whether they're trying to start podcasting or an experienced podcaster. What's crazy is, like, I'm still a relatively small podcaster analytically, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I feel like I've had some pretty good success, and I've learned a lot in the last 5 years of doing it. So when anyone comes to me with questions, I usually have an answer. And before podcasting, I was like a Twitch streamer. I try to play video games for fun and stream it to people. So that's a lot of where my knowledge came from, was trial and error through that. So
that's one thing. It's not a planned starting point here at all. But one thing that I've noticed as an interesting parallel between jiu-jitsu and taking on something creative and new, like starting a podcast, like out of a passion project, right, is this, like, you have aspirations of where you want to go. Kind of like maybe you look up to your podcast idols or different shows that you love. You like how they do something, whether it's an intro, a transition, the quality of their audio. You become really nitpicky about all this stuff, the same way that you would look up to some of your favorite grapplers of all time. But when you start, you're just a white belt, dude. Like, it just doesn't matter. You can't show up more days of the week to get that part of it done. You just have to keep coming. And when you do something like this, you know, you look back, I'm sure if you did this, you look back at your like early episodes or like your first episodes, you're like, whoa, dude, I can't believe I put that out, right? But you have to go through that stage. That's the getting smashed every single day stage. And with that, you pick up little things. You're like, oh, cool. You know, you get on a chat forum and you're like, wow, oh, I can do this, I can do that. And then you're like learning as you're going. And it's super gratifying when you make like little bits of progress.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, is like when I tell people, when they ask, you know, just this morning I gave someone, they're like, hey, I want to start a podcast. Do you have any advice? And like my first thing was, same thing with jiu-jitsu, you just got to start. Like,
100%.
because there's no amount of preparation that's going to like get you ready to actually be a podcaster, get on the jiu-jitsu mats. You just got to start. And when you first start, you're going to suck, you know, like, yep. And to even make that point even more home, how many failed celebrity podcasts have there been, right? Like,
oh, dude,
it's a skill, you know what I mean? So when people jump into they want to jump in and make a podcast, I'm like 100% down for it. I think everyone should try it. It's a great medium to talk to people, and people are so willing to give you their time, but you have to just start. You can't psych yourself out thinking you need the best microphone, the best video camera, all this and that. You just press record. Like one of my favorite YouTube channels, Think Media. Like
so
they're always like you just got to press record, and it's so true.
It's I mean, similarly in fitness, people get excited about the new year. What shoes am I going to get? What's the best pair of shorts to wear? What's the best moisture wicking top that I can get? And the reality is you got to show up. You just got to show up. That's how you actually make the progress, is you just start the thing, because that pushes this stupid little snowball of an idea at the very top of a big ass hill. And it doesn't look like it goes anywhere, but at least moves it just a little bit. And then you find, every piece of equipment that I'm surrounded by right now was not even on my radar day one in any capacity, right? I didn't even know. How can you know? You haven't done it yet. And then you start with whatever you have, and you learn, oh, I can get this piece, or they're doing it with this. I wonder if that's going to be a good fit for me. Or you reach out and you talk to people. I tell people the same thing. I'm like, do it 100%. Just make sure that you're doing it for the right reason. That you're curious and excited about the medium, not because you want to be famous and have a big show.
Yeah, because I hate to break it to you, but you're not gonna be more. Yeah. per the stats, you will not have a big show. You'll probably max out about average of what podcasting analytics are, and you'll get burnt out faster than you think. So you have to do it for the right reasons. You have, just like jiu-jitsu, you can't go in every day, right? Going like, today's the day I get my blue belt. Today's the day I get my blue belt, or today's the day I get my stripe. You know what I mean? Because every day that you don't get it, you're going to be let down. I follow a lot of forums on Reddit, like podcasting. People are always asking, how do I monetize my podcast, or how do I make this a full-time job? And they're like, well, how many episodes do you have? They're like, I'm 6 episodes deep. I'm like, don't even think about it. Unless you're cracking tens of thousands downloads already, don't even think about analyze or monetizing.
There's just so many things that are destined to go wrong. Just like in training, right? There's things that are you're gonna make dumb moves. You're gonna put yourself in a worse position without knowing it. You are gonna lose episodes. I want to lose an episode with an early on guest. I don't want to lose an episode when have 1 hour of someone's time in a super, super squash schedule, and you're talking to the president of the United States or something, right? That's the episode you do not want to lose in any capacity. And if that guest is number 7 and you make some dumb white belt error in your production, that's a travesty.
Yeah, I had my first big guest that John and I, my old co-host, had that it was just left and right, just issues, was Roy Dean. We looked up to Roy Dean the entire time in our white belt. I mean, I still do look up to him. I actually talk to him quite a bit and whatnot now, and it's crazy how you build relationships with these people afterwards. Yeah. But dude, camera died, mics weren't recording, wasn't recording on Zoom, because we were using Zoom at the time, and it was just one thing after another this entire the entire interview. And luckily I was able to edit it to where it wasn't really noticeable, especially if you were listening to the audio. But man, I was after that interview, I created a checklist of things that I need to check before I press record. Same. And I'll go through it with my guests. You know what I mean? I'm okay, I pressed record on this. I pressed record on that. All right, this is good. Is my fan on? Does everyone know in the house that, I'm recording? My wife is downstairs with the goddamn Kirby vacuuming right now. I don't know if you guys can hear that.
No, we're good because of the fan. Okay. That's a G move right there. Yeah.
Perfect. But yeah, no, it's now I'm I have ADHD, so I get distracted very easily, and I'll forget things left and right. And there's even, every episode, I'm crap, I could have done that better. Or, oh, man, I should have focused on that a little bit more. Man, this would have been a great question. And to tie it back to jiu-jitsu, how many times do you leave thinking after a roll oh, every shit, that was totally there. That's why I tell people so much, you should record your rolls. You should record your training, especially when you first start, because you're not going to know what you're looking at right away, but someone in that room's going to know, and you're going to look back at it oh, wow, I could have completely passed his guard if I would have just kept cutting that way, or whatever it is. So there's a lot of power in, analyzing your own faults, because you can learn so much.
Absolutely. What are your thoughts on like do it yourself, kind of the value of bootstrapping in the beginning and getting your hands on the production process, the audio process, the video process, the booking process? Like, I think these are things that commonly people aim to outsource really quickly. They go, I'm going to build a show or I'm going to build a thing. And so I'm going to outsource all these areas so that I can leverage my time and I can do what I'm supposed to do. But what are your thoughts on doing it yourself and some of the things that you learn along that line?
I think if it's a lot more expensive than I think people realize it is. I just recently hired an editor to do my podcast like 2 months ago.
Yep.
And it is expensive, but you got to kind of like place the value on your time. Like I just don't have the time right now to sit down and edit, do clips,
right.
Do everything, because I'm just like, I watch my kids during the day and they're two little ones. My oldest is in high school. And then once my wife gets off work, we high five and I go to work until midnight. Right. And,
wow.
I get home, I don't go to bed till like 1 a.m. and I wake up with the kids at like 6:37. So, my day is like jamming. So I just don't have time to edit anymore. I could,
right.
but it's like a priority to me. Like now I can afford an editor. So I'm just going to take it off my hands so I don't have to worry about it. But at the beginning, I think it's very valuable to kind of like bring it back to your point. If you can afford it and like it doesn't cause any financial strain on you, then 100% just outsource it. But most people starting a podcast don't have those means. So you should 100% learn how to do it yourself, because you're not going to know what you like until you make it yourself or figure it out yourself. And then, researching and everything like that, like, I don't know, I think there's like it's a lot more motivating when you look at a finished product and you made it all yourself.
Yeah.
Like you're like, I did this. Like this was I edited this. And then when you start hiring outside, you're like, wow, I really suck at this.
Right.
But it motivates you to like want to learn more. It's all about learning to me. And whether it's jujitsu, podcasting, fitness, you have to be humble enough to know that you don't know everything and you're going to suck at it when you first start. And everyone's going to know you suck at it, especially if you don't have a team behind you, and be okay with that. Like it could be very intimidating when you look at my setup, your setup, all these high level podcasters. Like, I have to look like that. It's like, you 100% don't have to. To your point, like you made earlier, everything I own has been has accumulated over 5 years of podcasting, buying one thing at a time. And I used to have a co-host, so I had to buy double of everything. You know what I mean? So it's like I have 2 of these microphones, I have 2 of these arms, I have 2 more arms downstairs, I have like 3 recorders. I have like a whole bunch of stuff, but I just incrementally improved one thing at a time. And it could be very overwhelming when you first start thinking, I got to be good at editing. I have to be good at asking questions. I have to be good at social media. I have to be good at promoting. And it's like, no, dude, you just got to focus one thing at a time. And then every episode, you're like, this is what I want to get better at this episode.
Yeah, it's like that 1% rule.
Exactly. Like, or when you go into step on the mats and you think, oh man, there's so much I don't know. There's so many things I suck at in my game. I have to focus on all of them. Like, no, anyone that has been doing jiu-jitsu longer than 10 minutes is going to tell you focus on one thing right now.
Yeah. It's funny because you see that jiu-jitsu has great parallels to so many aspects of life, but I mean, I'm sure other things do too. I'm sure like Muay Thai and wrestling and painting all have ways that you can apply the thing that you're passionate about to other areas of your life. But that humility is a really important aspect, because you're not going to have all the answers when you start anything. And it's funny, the outsourcing thing, like hiring an editor and being like, oh my God, I didn't know. I thought that I was good. And then I hire an editor, right? And I'm like, wow, these people are really incredible. All like this whole room that I'm in right now, I had been doing all the lighting myself based off forum, stuff like that. And I was getting so frustrated. And finally I was like, you know what? I have the money to take care of getting the right equipment. I just don't know anything about what to get. And my buddy, who now works for Flow as an editor, was my neighbor. Shout out Caleb. And he came over and I was like, dude, help me. And we did like a little exchange. And dude, he just like watching him go to work in this room, in this little space that I've created for it. he's like, "Man, we're going to put a key light here. We're going to drop this over here. We're going to backlight that. We're going to zoom the camera out. We're going to go ISO this, bam, bam, bam."
Yep.
And in like 15 minutes, he just demonstrated like the world of information that he had based on his entire career as a photographer and videographer and editor. And I was just so surprised. I was like, wow, that, you know, when it is the right time to bring on expertise in any area, it is so valuable. But it's choosing the right time to do that that's the hard part. But it's crazy watching someone incredibly skilled at what they're doing just bring something to life that you're like, I didn't even know I didn't even know what that was.
Yeah,
now,
or what they even do is they hear your idea and then bring it to life, like exactly how you're like, holy shit, like I don't have the skills to do what you just did, like, and this is exactly what I want, or like little tweaks here and there. Like the intros on my podcast now are pretty much like I sent my editor some references, like Think Media's podcast, Colin and Samir, some of these other, you know, YouTubers and podcasters and whatnot. And I was like, this is kind of where I want my intro to be. It's not the typical podcast or typical jiu-jitsu podcast intro. Right. And he nails it every single time. And I'm like, dude, this is freaking perfect.
That's rad. How long have you been using them?
Dan, shout out to Dan if you're listening to this, 3 months now. He used to do short form content for me. Yep. Verticals that I would go through them, and I would pay him and my buddy Ben. Both of them are over in the UK, and they would do short form content for me, verticals. And then I stopped using them for a while because I thought I was going to be spending the money somewhere else. But then once I had to switch work schedules like 2 months ago, I was like, hey, Dan, I need your help again.
Yeah.
It's been a game changer for me.
So what's the night job?
Oh, I just it's just my current job that I have now. I work for the shipyard here in Kitsap County.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, so Puget Sound Naval Shipyard. I work for them, and I just work the swing shift. So my shift is usually like 3:30 in the afternoon to about midnight, 1 a.m. is when I get home.
So is that like longshoresman adjacent type work?
What do you mean?
You're like longshoresman?
I don't know what that is, to tell you the truth.
Like shipyard hands. Kind of.
No, I work a desk job.
Labor. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
I work a desk job for the shipyard. Kind of like quick overview of it is the mechanics, the guys that are actually doing the work, they have to follow written procedures. Yep. And then I'm the person that like prepares the work to make sure that it's good for them to go. Not like in an engineering aspect, like step by step, but more of an administrative way to make sure that it's good for them to go. And then they go work it, they bring it back to me, and I say, hey, this work was done correctly, and then that's the end of it. So it's a fun job. It pays the bills, you know.
Shout out the graveyard shift too. I used to I worked for Enterprise Rent-A-Car out of college, and I finished my Enterprise career at the LAX airport, and I used to do the 2 p.m. to 1 a.m. shift. It's a specific group of people, man. Like if you've ever worked a graveyard anything to where you are like, sorry, I that's not right. I would get off at 3 a.m. So when you cross that hour, when you are at a business and you're working from like 10 to 3 a.m., I don't care what line of work you're in, it gets weird.
Yeah.
It's just a strange time to be awake, and you realize how many other people are also awake and alive and doing stuff at that time. It was such a trip, and then you're just on opposites of the rest of the world. Like it's, how do you juggle that and family and like being present with your kids and everything like that?
I mean, I would be lying if I said I was like perfectly good at it. It's trial and error.
Yeah.
The issue that I have now is luckily my work schedule is about to lighten up, but I usually work these last couple months 6-7 days a week, and it was hard. It is hard, you know, because I have to balance, you know, having 2 little ones, my wife, you know, my oldest one who's just got home from high school, and like all my stuff that I want to do. And so I always talk about how as myself, I wear so many different hats in my life. I have, you know, and depending on what's going on in the day, the hats might switch that are on my head. The one hat that's always on my head is father and husband, right? Yeah. I can't ever take that hat off. But depending on the situation, I might put the podcaster hat on for a little bit and put the father hat off. I might put the jiu-jitsu practitioner hat on for a little bit and then, put the father dad hat on. And then I'm a skateboarder now, and I'm going to go outside. Now I'm a father skateboarder. You know what I mean? So it's just balancing that. It's just the balancing act of which hat I'm going to be wearing at the time. And sometimes, honestly, I put the wrong hat on at the wrong time. And sometimes I put it on at the right time. And it's just me recognizing, sometimes I have to put the wrong hat on in order to get something done. And then, just suffer through it. And then, go back to what I need to be doing. When I was in editing in the podcast, sometimes I'd be like, babe, I'm sorry, I have to go do this. Like, I know it's busy right now. There's a lot of things going on in the house, but I have, deadlines and sponsorships, stuff like that. I have to get this out right now. And she'd be like, I get it. Just go. You know what I mean? So I'd have to go put that editor hat on and go edit a podcast until 12 o'clock in the morning. You know what I mean? 1 o'clock in the morning and get it out for the next day. But it's a struggle. I think anyone that has kids and a family or a spouse or something like that, it's something that everyone has an issue with. But I think it's okay to struggle at it as long as you're always coming from a place of I don't want to say integrity, but like you're trying to do the right thing. Sometimes we're just going to, like I tell my son, like if you're trying to do the right thing and you don't succeed, that's a whole lot different than trying to get away with doing the wrong thing. You know what I mean?
That's a totally different personality trait too. Like ingraining one of those is you're going to be a good citizen in society and a good friend. And one of them's you could kind of be a scoundrel if you're not too careful.
Yeah.
And learning how to act appropriately. When did you decide that you were going to take on, and I mean, we both stand on the other side of having launched shows and stayed consistent with it. And it's, it's something that we do. And I'm sure we both hope continues to grow and we can put more of our energy in this basket and less in other ones. When did you decide that you were going to take on podcasting and start that? And what were those initial phases of taking on a new endeavor like for you?
So I started the podcast with one of my best friends, John, who literally lives like across the street from me. Like we share driveways. I could throw a rock at his house. And we were in Japan for work, and I had just recently started listening to podcasts, and John hadn't. I was like, John, do you ever listen to podcasts? Like, no, I haven't. I was like, dude, you should check them out. Like usually there's some really good ones out there.
This is when you were in the Navy?
No. For my job I have now. I travel around. I travel to Japan for work every once in a while.
Okay.
San Diego too.
Yeah.
And so we were doing jiu-jitsu in Japan together under a couple Maliki Friedman color belts that were out there in the Navy. And I told him, I was like, hey man, when we get back, like I can't find a good jiu-jitsu podcast that is ran by white belts talking to white belts about the struggles of being a white belt. You know what I mean? Like it's at that point, it was like everyone that had a jiu-jitsu podcast were, high-level black belts or high-level belts that would talk about the struggles of a white belt, but it felt kind of like not disingenuous, but very far apart because it's been so long since they were there.
Right.
I was like, it's hard to relate to some of these people when they're like, oh yeah, jiu-jitsu is my full-time job and I run an academy and I understand how hard it is to make it to training sometimes. And I'm like, do you?
Do you?
Do you though?
Do you? Because you don't actually.
Yeah. So John and I just started sitting down and June 10th, 2018 is I think the first podcast episode. So it's coming up on 5 years. And we would just talk to our friends and just BS with our best friends. And we didn't have anyone on the show. I think it's like 20 episodes deep, 30 episodes deep is when we had our first outside guest from our academy. And it was a blast, man. But if you look at my numbers, I didn't have any big names on. So my first 2-3 years of growth were minimal, like, and when we started like reaching out to other people is when we started seeing growth and whatnot. But I had always been in content create, not always, but like I mentioned, like I tried to be a Twitch streamer, and so I had already been in like the content creation space. So I was kind of familiar with doing it and live streaming and stuff like that. So I was like, you know what? I think I can do it. I'm just going to try it. And I think the biggest success at the beginning was I just wanted to do it to have fun and just talk to my friends and record it. And so not seeing more than 10 downloads a month, or not seeing anyone review the podcast or any new listeners didn't bother me, because it was like, I'm really just doing this to document my journey. Like it was, we were just documenting our journey and talking about how hard it was being a white belt. And I think that was like a whole lot of fun. Like, I think that's what made it fun and was okay with us kind of sucking at it at the beginning. And like you mentioned earlier too, like I listened back at our first couple of episodes and we used to drink on the show. I mean, there was like my buddy Mike episode. We were hammered. Oh my God. It was like my friends, like people listen to the podcast now and they go back and they're like, hey, that Mike episode, you guys were like slurring by the end of it. I was like, yeah, dude, I don't even remember half that podcast. So some trial and error. Don't drink on the podcast anymore, but
right. So you got to tell me the drama. What you guys? He is a former co-host, but still your neighbor. So what happened?
No, there was no drama. John is in his mid-40s. Been through a lot of injuries. Had 2 shoulder surgeries, 2 shoulder replacements, and is a father also. We work together, same job and everything like that. And his body's just been put through the ringer too many times, and he's after his last shoulder surgery, he tried to come back, ended up hurting it again. He's like, I just don't think I have it in me anymore, man.
To keep doing jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, to keep doing jiu-jitsu. Yep. And then he was like, you know what? I think I'm going to I'm not doing jiu-jitsu anymore. It'd be unfair to be on a jiu-jitsu podcast talking jiu-jitsu. And he's like, so I think I'm just going to step away. And I kind of felt like I knew it was coming because John was kind of, like I mentioned, like I love John. He's like one of my best friends, man. But I did 99% of the work. You know what I mean? And so him stepping away wasn't like a big deal. You just lost
another voice on the show. Basically.
Yeah, I was worried that people liked, we always got commented on our camaraderie and, our cohesiveness and how we could banter with each other and make it feel like everyone else was in the room joking with us.
Right.
And so when I lost that, I was scared, honestly. I was like, dude, people are not going to want to listen to my stupid ass talk for an hour by myself and, just rant on. And the reception after John left has been great. We're still growing.
I'm still growing. Turns out no one liked John and everybody loved me.
I was like honestly waiting for that. I was like, hey guys, John left.
John.
They're gonna be like, like, fucking thank God, man. Sorry if you're not cuss on your podcast.
No, you can do whatever you want. And all respect to John. I don't know John, so I don't want to throw shade his way. But that's funny. So you split, and then you basically took the reins on doing it, and that was 2 years ago.
No, I think it was maybe not even a year ago. I think it was maybe 7-8 months ago. And there's pros and cons to having a co-host. One pro is like, if we say we're going to record an episode, we have to do it because we both allotted time in our schedules to do it. Right. So it was a lot easier to create content and make it more of a priority because we both were so busy. Now I'm like, well, I don't have anyone else waiting on me, so I can just not record because I'm so busy right now and not make it a priority. So that's like a big thing too and also like I love doing solo episodes, like update episodes or like mindset and stuff like that, like how you do the 30-minute Thursdays. So I love doing solo episodes but now it's a little bit harder just talking by myself because I don't have that feedback, the back and forth. So it's just me talking for a long time, I feel like.
The solo episodes, so I started doing those because my fiance recommended it. As you know, early days of a podcast, and I'm sure that this has happened to you, the amount of times that I've been canceled on within a 24-hour window by people that I respect, not by, people I don't know. I mean, by people that I look up to that I've been excited to have on. It's like in sales, just hearing no's, right? Like you will just, if you're worried about that or you're not thick-skinned in that regard, you can get totally beat up by podcasting because the reality is you're nobody to these people yet. Yeah. And so you have to just not take it personally. So I've had so many times where I'm in the studio, set up, lighting's on, cameras going, everything, nothing.
Yeah.
No follow-up, no reach out, no hey, no try to reschedule, like either just pure ghost or cancel within a 10-hour window, like really just in my eyes, poor courtesy. That's just not something that, whether it's your dentist, a dinner reservation, or your best friend, it's just not the way that I would go about my business. So in the beginning, it was kind of tough. And then I realized, look, if you want to do this, you're passionate about it, you just got to run through that shit. Whatever. People are going to cancel on you. But when that happens, if you're on a consistent schedule, if you don't have episodes in the bank, it can totally blow your production schedule, right? And so she's like, well, a lot of the podcasts I listen to, these girls they'll do awesome solo episodes where they catch people up on stuff, or they do a review, or they talk about a book they're reading or something. And I was like, that's an awesome idea, which started the 30-minute Thursday. But the problem was I went way too hard, and I was like, I'm going to do this every single Thursday for the rest of my life, instead of realizing that it can be something that you can sprinkle in. Because I think it's a great way to connect with guests, right? Like, your solo episodes are probably awesome opportunities for your listeners to jump in and tap into your life, or hear more about you or your opinions on stuff. And that's great for listenership, and it can fill the gaps. But solo episodes take a lot of creative drive. Where do you pull that from?
So I typically, so I do solo episodes for the main show, and I'm also I recently started a Patreon, and like one of the incentives that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do a White Belt Wednesday, where initially, and if you guys want to steal this idea, by all means, I read a book that Steal Like an Artist, and it said in there, don't worry, people aren't don't worry about people stealing your ideas. If it's good enough, they're gonna have to force it down their throat anyways, right? So if you guys want to steal this idea, by all means. Right. But so I'm going to start doing like a 15-minute episode on Wednesdays of like one mindset thing, a word that, I can talk about, like accountability, or I have like on my Instagram, I have like these 5 letters or these 5 words with a single letter, and how they apply to like getting better at jiu-jitsu. So like the 5 A's for white belts, the 5 B's for white belts, the 5 C's, right? So, and I was like, oh shit, I could just totally turn these into a podcast episode. You know what I mean? And like elaborate on them a little bit more and make it a little bit more personal. And, so I think I'm going to start doing that also. So, but I mean, AI nowadays really makes things a lot easier. So I'll have like an idea of, I want to talk about the struggles of being a dad in jiu-jitsu, and I'll go to like Chat GPT, and I'll type in like the couple things that I want to hit on, and then I'll read through what the prompt gives me. Usually it's pretty shitty, and I have to edit the hell out of it and make it sound like it. Like, I'm sure you can now if you use Chat GPT. Like, you'll read captions, you're like, dude, that's 100% not even edited out of Chat GPT. Right. And so I try to make it like, much more personable and stuff like that. But most of the time it's me just talking about something that literally just happened to me in my jiu-jitsu journey, right? Like, I got smashed in the last 3 or 4 classes, and I can't breathe, and like how hard it's been to make it to class lately because my kids have been so busy and my life has been so busy. I really just try to document instead of create, and document what's going on in my life and turn that into something valuable for other people. Like, I think about like, okay, so what happened to me this week? How can I make this valuable for other people? And what did I learn from this? So maybe they can learn from it also. And then kind of just like go on from there. I try to stick to like 30, 45 minutes for solo episodes, because I don't think people really want to hear me. Like, even like this answer, I feel like I'm talking too much.
No, you're good.
So it's like I try to keep it to a minimum. That way the ideas don't sound redundant, and it's something that someone can listen to really quick and hopefully get a little nugget out of it to better themselves also.
Well, I think when you touch on those kind of things, you're also touching on things that are common heartaches for people. I mean, you go into any, if it's not B team or Danaher's team, right?
Yeah.
You go into any academy and you're going to find a mix of people. You're going to find parents, people that are entrepreneurs. You're going to find people that work 9 to 5. So you get all these different people pursuing this passion of getting better at jiu-jitsu, but they all have heartaches. And it sounds like you're tapping into some of those with your listeners, and hopefully, they're walking away from that with a little bit of nugget that they can apply to their life and go, oh yeah, Travis had a good point the other day when he was talking about that. I feel that way.
Yeah, that's what I usually get after doing some solo episodes, especially if I haven't done one in a while. Mm-hmm. is I'll do a solo episode where it's kind of like me just venting. You know what I mean? Like not nearly like complaining about my life or anything like that, because I'm very fortunate. I have a very good life, and there are definitely people out there that have it much worse than I do, and I don't ever want it to be an "oh woe is me" episode. But people want to hear from other struggles,
Yeah.
and so I just tell them about my recent struggles, and they're like, "Man, you really should do more solo episodes." I really enjoy solo episodes. It's so much more relatable than you talking to high level black belts or high level competitors or something like that. And I agree. I think it's much more relatable, but my solo episodes don't bring in new listeners. No offense.
Have you ever been surprised by an episode trending particularly well that you were like not expect? Like, what's an example of that where you're like, wow, I kind of just threw that out there. I didn't think that would be such a performative episode on the show.
My number one episode last year was a solo episode, and it was, if I was starting jiu-jitsu in 2023, this is what I would focus on. And it was just me with my lessons that I've learned in my, coming up on 6 years of jiu-jitsu, and how I would change and focus on different things. And it was a 30-minute, 40-minute episode. I think I talked about like 5 things that I would focus on in 2023. And it was my most popular episode ever by a long shot. Like I'm still surprised how good it did. And so knowing that was so popular, I just released an episode with Jordan Pressinger, where it was if level up your jiu-jitsu in 2024 by focusing on these. So just like a little bit of a different play on it.
Yep.
And it was, just concepts and theories that he thinks you should focus on in 2024 to really level up your jiu-jitsu. And it's fucking skyrocketing right now, especially on YouTube. And I'm like, maybe this is just all the content I make. It's just
well, I think but this is an important part about being a creator in any capacity is like, I don't know, as a creator, you want to create what you want to create. That's an important part because that makes it authentic. And you don't want the crowd to steer you in the wrong direction. But at the same time, if you're getting feedback and it's positive, it's worth thinking about. It's worth paying attention to a little bit and going, I wonder why that's doing what it is doing. There's got to be something more there. Because one thing I have learned through the creative process of, at least in this medium, is like when things do well, it's not accidental. Like maybe an outlier is like there's some weird algorithmic update and so things trend in a different capacity. But for the most part, when things do well, they do well for the right reasons because it's intriguing. You're sharing information that people find valuable. And when people find valuable stuff, they share it quickly. And when that happens, things trend up. So you get a little nod like that from an episode performing well, and it's like, oh, hey, there's a door here. I didn't even see this before. I'm going to open this and see what happens. That must be a great episode too, because Jordan's a good communicator, and he's obviously a phenomenal jiu-jitsu practitioner, but that's got to be a pretty cool episode to start the year off with.
Yeah, and this is the third time Jordan's been on my podcast, and
rad.
He's like a really good friend of mine now. I go to him for content creation questions all the time, jiu-jitsu questions. I send him rolling footage, and he's an incredible friend that I've never even met in real life, but because I had him on the first time on my show when he was at like 40,000 subscribers on YouTube or something like that, maybe 6-7 months into his YouTube career. And now he's over 200,000.
Yeah, he's killing it.
So every year I have him on again, and this was by far the best. Like this, even like not even to get people to go listen to it, but this was by far the best interview that we've done. And I think we talked afterwards. And like I think it's because I podcast now. I understand like the craft a little bit better. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, dude, that was money. It was great. I mean, there are some people that are more gifted to have conversations and really share their knowledge. And then, I mean, there's some people where you're like, this is going to be a great episode. And by the end of it, you're like, I don't even know how I'm going to use this.
Yeah. I know but sometimes I feel like in those episodes, there's like nuggets that you don't see because as hosts, we're critical of what we're doing. But sometimes people will reach out and they'll say something and I'm like, wow, that's the thing you picked up from that episode.
Yeah.
And it just kind of sits with me. I'm like, interesting, because that's not something that I would have thought would have been an impact point or like a takeaway, but it just resonated with them in a special way. When you're thinking about your podcast and Elbows Tight and the growth of the show and where you want to take it, where do you want to go with a show like this? Do you want to kind of stick? I mean, it's elbows tight, right? So like either elbows tight and then somehow you find other things in life where your elbows are tight, or or people understand that that's an important part of jiu-jitsu, right? When you're learning to defend yourself. How do you branch outside of the genre in the event that it grows that way?
That's honestly something that I struggle with, because even my LLC is Elbows Tight LLC, which, I mean, I could always change the name of the LLC.
Right.
But for Elbows Tight, my grand scheme of things is I want to have like a media company where Elbows Tight is just an entity under this larger media company. And if I have the opportunity to grow in a different direction, then being able to do that under the large scope of my creative desires, right?
Right.
I think Elbows Tight is my whole goal from it hasn't really changed. I just want to be a one-stop shop for all new practitioners that want to hear from someone that has been going through it with you, can make relatable content, talk to people about their struggles in their journey, no matter what the level is. And, just allow them to kind of like have a space where they can be like, sometimes the internet could be a mean space, or, you know what I mean? It could be really mean. You could go on Reddit and be like, hey, is this normal? And you could like get comments that are like, dude, quit being a pansy, buckle up, like pull yourself up by the bootstraps. You're like, listen, dude, I'm just asking if this is normal. It's like, so I kind of want to like create, not a safe space because I'm a millennial, but it's like, I hate that word safe space, but just a place that someone can come and listen to relatable content and watch relatable videos and hopefully gain some theory or some insight into how they can, be better. And my whole goal was never to like release technique videos or rolling breakdowns or try to fall into this space that a lot of jiu-jitsu content creators are right now of, they're so smart and like, look at how good of jiu-jitsu I am, or look at all this and watch me break this video down. And I mean, I watch them and a lot of them are my friends, but that's just not me. I'm not that good at jiu-jitsu. I don't have that knowledge. My superpower isn't being a high level competitor or being super good at jiu-jitsu. I think my superpower is I used to be super fit. Now I'm relatively fit. I have kids. And I go through the same struggles probably 90% of the people that do jiu-jitsu go through. You know what I mean? And I think that's much more relevant than trying to be a Jordan Pressinger, trying to be a Tyler Spangler, trying to be a Chewy, because that's just not who I am. And it would come off, like you mentioned earlier, very unauthentic.
Well, and it would take a lifetime of having done that for your life. Someone like Chewy, I mean, he was kind of the first guy to really break into YouTube doing jiu-jitsu instructional content for free and build a kind of a juggernaut out of it, and then set that stage for people to go and repeat that same process and get more crafty with the videos and stuff like that. But he also competed for years, like he
world
was
champ.
Right. He was like, it's not like he did that when he was halfway through the belts. Like he had been around for a while. I think, a lot of those guys, they had kind of proven themselves, and jiu-jitsu it's an interesting spot because it's popular and it's getting more popular as we speak. It's crazy when you talk to some of our guests and like, dude, they were doing jiu-jitsu way before it was, not even before it was cool, but before people thought about maybe this will be cool, right? They were just, I almost envy that a little bit, that like, I found jiu-jitsu because of being a fan of the UFC, Joe Rogan commentating UFC, Joe Rogan talking about jiu-jitsu, realizing that jiu-jitsu and karate and like Bruce Lee were different things, and then that jiu-jitsu had this huge practical application, and then getting into it, 6 years ago now as a full-on adult, when it had already been big.
Yeah.
It must have been a really special time being involved in jiu-jitsu when it was still developing and social media didn't exist.
Yeah, one of my guests, Gustavo Dantes, started jiu-jitsu in like 88. You know what I mean? In Brazil. And I'm like, that's just like, I mean, that I wasn't even born yet. You know, I was born in 89.
Same. Yeah, same.
You know what I mean? So I'm like, holy crap. Like, I couldn't even imagine. It's kind of like thinking about our grandparents or great grandparents and how they were born in the early 1900s and how they could still be alive today. Like, some people are still alive today that were born in, like, I don't know, 1919. You know what I mean? Or 1920s or 1930s. And just watching the growth of, like, civilization in that time frame. I could only imagine, like, that's kind of how people that have been doing jiu-jitsu for 30, 40 years feel. You know what I mean? When they look at, like, man, we used to just be in the favelas just trying to survive and rolling with each other and, you know, like, and now look at ADCC and Flow Grappling and all these entities that are really just propping it up, and the UFC, and you know what I mean? And that's, it's cool to see, even in my short time of doing jiu-jitsu and watching how much it's grown, has been remarkable to me.
So you had I'm curious about your beginning, kind of like your fitness journey in 2013. Maybe you can walk me through that, like where you were before that, getting into CrossFit. And then I feel like CrossFit's an end point for a lot of people. Like, you walk in the front door of fitness because you want to get in shape. You get in shape and you realize that, like, how do you keep this a habit? How do you keep this a part of your life? And then CrossFit's over here kind of like, hey, why don't you come test out all that strength you built? And you go get your ass kicked and you're like, oh my God, I need more of this. But then on the end of that, sometimes, you know, you get to the end of CrossFit and you're like, where can I really apply any of this?
Mm-hmm.
And then jiu-jitsu's kind of over there in the corner, like, come try it over here, right? So, but a lot of people stop there. They get on that effort level. So what was your, like, deciding that you wanted to take your fitness and your health into your own hands, going through that whole process, and then ultimately, how did you end up pursuing the gentle art?
So when I was like 19, 20 years old, one of my best friends, Todd Smithson's my tattoo artist down in San Diego. And
where?
He was at Nothing Sacred. Now he's at a new tattoo over, I don't even know what it is. He's like one of the few guys that has his entire face tattooed. If you see him, he's always cycling. He does jujitsu. He's a purple belt in jujitsu over at, oh man, what is the place? I'll send you his profile on Instagram.
Yeah, let me know. I feel like I think I know that shop, but I think it's more south than I am. But anyway, continue.
He was on 319 Market Street for years.
Okay, yep.
But so with him, he's the one that really, I've known him since I was 19 years old, been getting tattooed him since I was 19 years old. And so basically whatever he did, I was kind of like right behind him. He's like 10, 12 years older than me.
Yep.
And so at first it was cycling. We both got into cycling and
like road riding.
Yeah, road riding. You know, fixed gear bikes. We would always go ride our fixies everywhere around San Diego. And then it was after I left San Diego, I got to Guam and I had stopped smoking cigarettes, and I put on a bunch of weight from it. And
from stopping.
Oh,
because it's obviously not curbing your appetite as much.
Yeah. So I gained a bunch of weight. I was like in the 200s. Like I was about the same weight I am now, but I wasn't nearly as healthy as I am now, even though I'm a little bit heavier. So when I got to Guam in the Navy, I was like, look, dude, I gotta lose some weight. Long story short, found CrossFit after going to the gym with my friends for a little bit, and me and my buddy Manny started it together. And I fell in love with it because I loved the sense of community. I loved how easy it was to just show up and do the workout that took 30, 45 minutes and then go home. And I felt like I accomplished something. So when I moved to Washington State, the first gym I found was the first gym that I stayed with. Like Cody is the only CrossFit gym that I've been to in Washington State as like a member. Yep. And something strange happened. Like once I got to him and I started like doing his programming and whatnot, I started like getting super freaking strong. And I was like, this is crazy. Like how is this happening? You know, and so I was like 170 pounds, squatting almost 400 pounds, front squatting. My best front squat was like 345. I was clean and jerking 275 pounds, snatching and, you know, low 200s. And this was back in 2014, which were like super respectable numbers for like an average CrossFitter. Now people hit that shit like it's no big deal to me. Yeah. But so after my fitness journey, I competed in CrossFit a lot. And Cody the gym owner, one of my best friends, he was a former amateur MMA fighter, was talking about starting jiu-jitsu again, and finally decided to open his own academy. And once I started jiu-jitsu, I kind of just threw CrossFit to the side. I was like, this is way more exciting. Like it kind of grabbed me like how CrossFit did when I first started. And I mean, I haven't stopped since, besides the days, obviously I can't train, but I mean, like I've never really thought about quitting jiu-jitsu. I never really thought about stopping jiu-jitsu. The podcast has been a big reason for that also. But I don't know, man. It's like the closest thing I got to my friendships in the Navy, because we're all going through hardships together. We're all trying to grow together, and it's been a blast. And I've met some amazing people from it. Like even being able to come on your show is because of jiu-jitsu. So I'm like, I'm forever in debt because of it. You know what I mean? So
it's a special, like I've been a part of a lot of different team things that they've all been individual. They've actually all been structured exactly like jiu-jitsu. They're individually performed. So like I grew up skiing competitively, but you're on a team. Jiu-jitsu is individually performed, but you're part of a team, right? You're part of the community of that gym, that academy. And it is a unique art form, a unique physical exertion because of the element of you going against someone. But underneath that is that you actually want that person to be better than they are. And they want it for you too. Like when I skied competitively, I skied against my teammates, but it was me in the run, nobody else, go. No one's trying to fight me while I'm doing that, right? And to be fair, other people want to beat me, and I want to beat them, and I don't want them to win at all. And I don't want to win and then kind of wish that they had won. Or like, oh, hey, you really got to ski better next time so that you can beat me. That's not part of the ethos at all. But in jiu-jitsu, you can get smashed, and the second the time's up, you guys are talking about how you could have been better, right? Like, that's a unique type of environment, and I think it really sticks with some, not with everybody, but with some people, and it definitely got you, it got me, and it's fun to be a part of that. It's a unique kind of community.
Yeah, and when I first started podcasting, I thought it was going to kind of be the same, like people are going to be, very forthright right with their information and stuff like that. And when I first started at 28, dude, it was like, why are there so many gatekeepers? Like, I'm just asking, how do I grow? And I think over the last, couple years, it's definitely, as podcasts has grown, the gates have opened more on people sharing their knowledge and whatnot. And it's just like when jiu-jitsu first started, you couldn't go anywhere and learn from anyone. The only time you could see someone else's game was at competition. Right. And, I just love the knowledge sharing that's in jiu-jitsu. It's still out there that, people don't want to give you all their secrets for whatever reason. But I don't know, man. I love growing as a person, whether it's physically, mentally, emotionally, whatever. And jiu-jitsu kind of checks a lot of those boxes in one session. It's hard not to grow when you walk in there thinking you're going to be good for the day because like you ate all your macros on point, you had a good strength conditioning earlier, and then you step on the mats and someone else is just having a better day. You know what I mean? You're like, all right, I guess I'm back to the drawing boards on this one.
What was there any element of that in the Navy for you?
No, not really. I think in the military, I was very fortunate with the people that, and my job in the Navy. A lot of us are similar to me. We're a bunch of jokesters. Like we just want to talk, have fun, joke with people. Not too many like backstabbers or people that are fake to your face, and then when you get promoted, they're like, "Oh, that should have been me." I mean, there is that. I just never really encountered it because the people that I grew up with in the military weren't like that. If anything, we kind of just got each other in more trouble because we were just doing so much stupid stuff together. It's kind of like a class when you're supposed to be doing the technique and you and your buddy are joking, trying to just roll, and then the professor's like, "What are you doing?" You're like, "See, I told you, man. Like, we shouldn't be doing that." It was a lot of that. Not too much. And I was pretty successful at the Navy too. I feel a lot of the right place, right time. I got promoted very fast, and so I have to attribute some of that to luck, and to some of that being I was with the right people that were giving me the right choices to make, and And just like anything, like I tell my oldest son, I'm like, hey man, if you want to show me who you are as a person, show me the people you surround yourself with, you know, because that's going to be who you grow up to be. That's going to be who you're trying to emulate. And if you're on the mat and you're constantly trying to break someone's leg, or you're cranking submissions too hard or letting go too late, I think that says a lot more about your character than who you are when we step off the mat. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, I mean, jiu-jitsu is a very it's a very clear magnifying glass of personality traits. Like, people can pretend to be one way and then they get on the mats and your true colors show, whether you are comfortable, panicked, high-strung, chill, angry, if you're a bully, if you're a wimp, you know, like whatever it is. I mean, it will show, because you'll be put in a pressure cooker that doesn't present itself in other areas. You will find out if you can suffer or not in CrossFit. That's what you'll be faced with. You'll hit a point where your heart rate's really fucking high and you have to do another 5 EMOMs. Yeah. And that's like, can you push yourself through that, or are you going to give up? That's the one thing you have to be faced with. But in jiu-jitsu, there's that, and your ego's on the line, and someone's smashing you, which it elicits this reaction that is a childlike reaction initially, which is, get the fuck off me, right? That you have that response, that anger, and you have to learn as a practitioner when to use that and how to quell it. Because when you look at high-level practitioners, their relationship with their anger spectrum is really in tune. They know how to dial it down, keep it back, and they're not suppressing it. They're just controlling it. They're displacing it along their game. And they know that brief moment where they can turn it on to flip someone over, to sink a submission, to finish something, whatever it is. But that's an elevated level of development and learning and psychological change that happens that isn't present in other things that are just hard.
Yeah.
You know,
and to your point on that too, whether you're doing a heavy bench or an AMRAP or whatever, that barbell is not going to know that you're not giving 100%. Like, you roll with someone. Everyone has felt this when the other person has given up. You're
that's
like,
the best
there's a
feeling,
lot,
man.
Dude, right? Demoralizing. They're like, oh my God, you just got me, right?
Yeah.
But the barbell doesn't know when you do that, right?
Right.
You could easily just say, man, I'm just so tired. I just can't lift it anymore. Oh man. Yep. It's like, but can you really get that honest feedback? You know what I mean?
That's what it is. It's the honesty part. Because you can lie to yourself in the gym all day, and you can lie to everybody else there, and you can be like, man, my macros were off, or like, someone will be like, I already lifted today, or whatever, you know, whatever people want to say. Yeah. Or the reality is, like, maybe their body's just not online that day. Because some days, I'm sure in CrossFit, if you're snatching and cleaning and jerking those numbers, you've had days where you come in and you're like, that was the best lift I ever had. Holy shit, I did not expect that. Those days where you randomly PR like 2 kilos and you're like, what? How did that happen today? That makes no sense. But that's never an option in jiu-jitsu. People know. Yeah. They know. They know when you give up, and you can feel tension. Like when you train with someone who's brand new, you can feel their body reacting to what's going on and wanting it to stop, or wanting it to control it. And there's no way you can when you're new, right? So it's like a great teacher. It's a great mirror. That's what jiu-jitsu is. It's a fantastic mirror of where you are psychologically.
Yeah, the first time I got smashed in jiu-jitsu wasn't by a big, strong guy. And I was like almost at my strongest I'd ever been when I started jiu-jitsu, right?
Yeah.
Like
very
my numbers,
parallel experiences here.
Yeah. So I was like almost the strongest I had ever been. And the first time I rolled with someone, he was a 1-stripe white belt that had been rolling for had been doing jiu-jitsu for maybe a year, 8 months. Yeah. Demolished me. 19-year-old kid demolished me. Like, was brutal on me. And I was trying. Like, he was like, all right, whatever, bro. Just like, I'll just kick your ass. Like, I don't even really care. So it's like, yeah, I would sit there and I would like try to use so much strength. And when I feel it now, I'm like, I know that feeling, man. I promise.
You're like, I'm going to sweep the hell out of you right now.
You're like, listen, you pushing up on me as I'm in mount and I'm just sinking my hips into you isn't going to do anything. Yeah, it's like, just relax, dude.
What was when that was happening? So I can imagine, and I'm kind of paraphrasing my experience here, but I can imagine you had a little bit of an understanding of who you were, right? You're like, I'm the strongest I've ever been. I fucking shred CrossFit. I clean and jerk this much. I can AMRAP this. I can do that. This jiu-jitsu stuff's going to be a breeze.
Dude, 100%.
So this kid mops the floor with you. What was your, like, after that roll, what were the thoughts that were going through your head?
The immediate thought, and you're going to laugh at this, the immediate thought was I would fucking die in the streets. I was like, holy shit. I was like, I thought I was big and strong. I had a gas tank. I was so exhausted by the end of that 5 minutes.
Yeah.
The guy just got up and walked away. And I was like, dude, there's no fucking way. I was like, if anyone in the streets were to challenge me right now and just had a little bit of training, I would die. Like there wouldn't even be a fight. Like they could just have their way with me. And so from that moment on, I was like, no one is ever going to make me feel that way again. And it happened for probably about another year and a half. But I was like determined to not let it happen at one point. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man. I'll spare the story. Maybe I'll tell it on your show. because I've told it so many times. Like, I don't want to bore people. But that initial moment where like you leaned into curiosity, where I think a lot of people lean into like tail between their legs, and they're like, oh my God,
I don't want anything to do with that. I'll never put myself in that situation again.
And then they walk away and kind of go, well, that was a fluke. Or whatever they have to tell themselves, that like it went down that way because of X, Y, or Z, or I already lifted today. That's why that happened. But then there's, and I think this is true for many, many people in jiu-jitsu, is that initial experience is a pivotal moment for the strong person. Like if you are coming from any background at all of athletic ability, strength, performance, you need to get your ass kicked the first time. It has to happen, because if you lean in the curiosity of what was that, then you will have this whole opportunity of future growth and learning and humility that you can go down. But if you walk away, you never get to try that again. And you get to tell yourself whatever you want about how it went down. But the reality is jiu-jitsu just happened, and it does work, and it worked on you, and your strength was negated.
Yeah. When I talked to Steve Kwan, one of the things that he mentioned that really stuck with me is he said, a lot of people think that a lot of people quit at blue belt, but most people quit at white belt. And he's like, how many world champs have walked into a jiu-jitsu academy only to be met with a bad experience and walk out? You know what I mean? And it's like so true. It's like how many people have faced, like maybe that guy was going too hard on their first roll, or maybe it was a smaller female and someone just wanted to prove a point, or you know what I mean? Like what is that? My first experience wasn't negative to me, but it could have been negative to someone else. You know what I mean?
What are your thoughts? It sounds like we may differ here, which always makes for interesting conversation. But so what are your thoughts on what that the first roll should be like? Maybe not the first roll, actually. The first introduction to class.
See, this is something that I've gone back and forth with, and I definitely think you should read the room or read the person.
Yeah.
Because if the person is beyond timid, they've had trauma in their background. I talked to a group, a New Hope, and it's a bunch of female practitioners that work with former trafficked women and sex survivors and stuff like that. And, they would say, like, there's a lot of times that just being in some of these positions would trigger these women's PTSD. Sure. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so ever since talking to them, I've really looked at it like you have to read the person. If they're a young, strapping guy that was like, I can do this, then maybe you match their intensity. But if it's someone frail looking for jiu-jitsu because they hear about the superpower of jiu-jitsu, then you should come at that person differently. But I think sparring as soon as possible in a controlled environment so people can see and experience it is important in my eyes. Like, because the application of jiu-jitsu is where we learn the most, in my opinion. And if you can attend as many classes as you want, learn as much technique as possible, and at the end of the class, you just leave and never try to apply it, then if you have to use it in real life, then it's not going to be there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think rolling is very important, but you have to understand who that person is that's bumping and slapping a fist in at the end or before you start rolling.
Yeah, I think the reading the room thing is well said, because you do need to take into it. If someone comes in and they're, obviously physically unfit, or they're physically frail, or they look unsure, you want to hit that person with a little bit of jiu-jitsu, so that they get that, they came here for a martial art. They didn't come here for baking class. So
Yeah.
they need to get a little bit of that, the realness of it. But it should be an uplifting experience.
It should be empowering. It should be encouraging.
Empowering.
It should show them like, look, I'll put myself in these bad positions and I'm going to give you a couple cues on how you can sweep me. And it's like, good job. Like, now what I want you to do is to go here. And it really shows them like you can do it, and then you just slowly start turning it up over an extended period to where the point where it's not showing them that what they were doing wasn't working, but it takes more effort than was given before, I guess you would say.
And then on the other side of that coin, if the person's athletic, if they're young, whether they're humble or not, if they're athletic and they demonstrate that through their ability to move in the warm up, their demeanor, you can kind of give them the sauce. And I think that's the right thing to do with someone like that, because, I look back on, had my first experience not been intense, I don't know if I would have gone back. So that was a good job on their part of reading that and going, this is an okay opportunity to like basically destroy this person, which was good for me. And then it excited me to learn more. But that's not always the case. And you bring up, I want to listen to that episode, because I'm sure that's fascinating, what the work that they're doing. But I can only imagine, dude. Male or female, if you've been a victim in any capacity of abuse in your life, and now you're going to start in all these positions, which let's call a spade a spade. A lot of these positions, that's one thing that like in and of itself, you kind of have to get over no matter what, when you're starting jiu-jitsu, is some of these positions, to learn the technique, aren't your favorite position to be in the world. Right. And that could 100% be something that calls up extremely bad memories for someone. Yeah. And that has to be respected, because ultimately you want that person to do jiu-jitsu. They need it the most. They need it way more than the dude who's coming over from the CrossFit class, who's snatch and double his body weight, who's looking for an outlet for all his fucking testosterone, right? You want the smaller person who needs to know how to protect themselves. That's the use case for jiu-jitsu. So they can't be, and I'm sure it's a travesty that, thousands of people have been turned away in that capacity.
Yeah, and I think jiu-jitsu community is doing much better now about, that first that parking lot view of what the academy is, or that front door view of what the academy is. I think it's we do a lot better now of not being so elitist in the. I talk about this with my buddy Cody, who I just interviewed. Jiu-jitsu can have this very elitist feel to it, especially when you first come, because you'll see these guys are rolling hard and they're doing all this, and like they're, you could feel very unwelcome because no one said anything to you because you have a white belt on and you're at the back of the line because you're so brand new, and it could feel very separated from everyone else. And I think that could be even a bigger turnoff to people than being smashed. You know what I mean? Because at least if you're getting smashed and you have a good environment, then you have something there to fall back on. But if you're getting smashed and you feel segregated from everyone else because you're new, then dude, that's just a recipe. Like no one's gonna want to be a part of that. You know what I mean? So I think that's a big aspect of jiu-jitsu that is improving every day, and having conversations with people and talking about jiu-jitsu and challenging everyone's ideas is honestly improving that also. Because if it wasn't for conversational jiu-jitsu, is what I like to call it, conversational jiu-jitsu, then it'd probably be a whole lot different.
Do you get excited about things like the growth of ADCC and that event coming up later this year? Is anything like that Like, do you think about going to that event and like popping up a media window and doing anything with that? Are you drawn towards the no-gi boom in any capacity?
Uh, Not really. I think honestly, I think ADC is like the only thing that I find entertaining. I think competitive jiu-jitsu is extremely boring.
Mhm.
Tell you the truth. Some like quintuplets entertaining. EBI can be entertaining, but when people are stalling until overtime and then going to triple, quadruple overtime, you know what I mean, and
Mhm.
win by whole time, like to me that could be uh very boring to watch. I do love ADCC, and I have thought about trying to get a booth there and being like, bring some of my merch or whatever it
Yeah.
is, and patches and all that stuff, and trying to, get people to get eyes on me. But I just don't think that's in my cards right now. I think it's maybe one day when I have a team, and then they could go and do it for me.
Yeah, I mean, well, if the growth happens, right? And that's the one cool thing about this, as hard as it is, right? As challenging as it is to run a show and grow it, which is a feat, is that on the other side of it, you have 100% autonomy over whatever you want to create, right? If you've done right by your listeners and you work hard to continually provide them with interesting conversations and useful feedback and pieces that they can take home and apply, like you can turn it into whatever you want. If you wanted to be an umbrella media company for a bunch of different shows that touch on a bunch of different things, you can do that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really cool.
Yeah, yeah. I have a lot of aspirations for doing this full time. If it'll happen,
Mhm.
I don't know. But it's always nice to have a dream. It's always nice to pursue something and try to be better with it and try to grow. And if I get there, I get there. If I don't, I mean, my day job doesn't suck. My
Right.
personal life doesn't suck. I'm pretty happy, married with kids, and have a good paying day job. And I still get to roll jujitsu and be around like minded people. So I just gotta be realistic about it right now. I can't. I'm not a single guy with no, that can dedicate his life to becoming the world's best content creator and doing all this all the time. And I think a lot of people, when they start jujitsu, they'll be like, ah, man, I want to be a world champ, or I want to train all the time. And you put this unrealistic expectation on yourself that you have to make X amount of classes, you have to be so good, and when you don't achieve those goals, or you fall short of it, or you put yourself on a pedestal that you can't reach, then you're setting yourself up for failure. And I think being realistic with yourself and understanding what you can and can't give is just going to make yourself better and make your journey a lot more enjoyable when you don't have these goals that are so far out of reach that you're like, I'll never reach that, so what's even the point?
I know that you after the Navy, you wanted to pursue being a firefighter, or left the Navy to be a firefighter. So I'm interested in the psychology of, I don't want to call it quitting because that's not what's happening, but it's almost like quitting with intention. Like
Mm-hmm.
you're not giving up on something, you're recognizing its place and then deciding appropriately what to do about that. So walk me through, you invest time and money to go into firefighter school and then get out on the other side of that and realize it's 100% not for you. So what was that realization process like? And then how did you decide to let go of something that you just put all this time into?
So I was a little bit of a firefighter in the Navy also, as was part of my job.
Mhm.
And so when I was in the Navy, I was like, man, I became a volunteer firefighter for one of the fire departments here in Kitsap County. And I was like, yeah, this is what I want to do, man. This is what I want to do. And I got
And
out of
so
the
you were
Navy.
like, you were in the truck, you were actually going
Yeah.
out and like,
Yeah.
you were
Doing all
active.
that.
It
Yep.
wasn't administrative.
Right. Yeah. So
Yep.
it was like I was a volunteer firefighter. I would go on calls and stuff like that with career guys, and had a lot of fun. And after the after the fire academy, during it was ran like boot camp, and I thought it
Mhm.
was super cool because I got out December 31st, 2015, and January 14th or 15th I was in the fire academy. So I was not far removed from the military. So it was pretty easy
So
for me
that
to,
structure was like,
yeah, that structure was there.
yeah.
And that's kind of probably where it put a bad taste in my mouth, in not firefighting's super cool, amazing job. Some of the bravest people I've ever met in my life. But I told myself, I was like, oh man, I was like, yeah, this is cool. It's like, it's easy because I was just in the Navy. And I was like, but wait a second, I got out of the Navy because I didn't want to be part of the military anymore. And like, there's like, yes sir, no sir, ranks. It's a paramilitary organization in some aspects. And I was like, I don't really know if this is for me. I enjoy having a normal day job and then going on calls with career guys and then going home. You know what I mean? And not being up for 24 hours, running calls all the time, and being at a higher risk for cancer, a higher risk for heart disease, and putting my life on the line every day I go on a call. And I was like, I just don't think that's what is in the cards for me anymore. I think I like, and I was okay with it because I had given it a go. It's not like I was like, I'm going to go to the fire academy. I got there and I was like, this is not for me. This is way too hard, blah, blah, blah. I saw both sides of it. In the fire academy, one of my lieutenants that was instructing me, actually all three of them were in major tragedies in Washington State. Two of them were at the Oso landslide, and after the big landslide over here in Eastern Washington, or Central Washington, and then one of them was one of the first paramedics on the scene for the Marysville high school shooting. And he grabbed the first kid and take him, right? And it was a different part of firefighting that I had never really thought of. Like, you don't hear a lot about the trauma that firefighters go through with, dealing with this stuff. And I was like, man, I don't really know. Like, I don't really know if I want to go through that, to tell you the truth. Like, I don't have to right now. It's a choice. And if I take this job, then that's something I'm going to have to go through. Not necessarily like school shooting and stuff like that, but, just like the trauma.
But I mean, if a car accident happens, like, fire trucks go. And if that body is caught between the windshield and the dashboard, fire trucks
so I was like, I don't really know, man. And then I enjoyed being a volunteer so much, and all the career guys were like, man, being a volunteer was way better than being a career guy. They're like I loved being a volunteer. There was so much more pride when I didn't get paid to do this. And I was like, I just didn't think it was for me anymore. I had a blast in the fire academy. I did a little bit of volunteering after I applied for a couple fire departments. I got a job offer from a fire department, and I was like, just something in the back of my head was like, yeah, it's just not for you. And so I just listened to it, and I'm happy I did, because I don't know where I would be at now if I would have, so.
Well, it's a hard thing for people to do, to listen to that voice. And so, because I mean, from my perspective, it sounds like you made a fantastic decision for all the right reasons, right? Like, just hearing you talk about it, it sounds like that wasn't the right fit. But it's hard to, in careers and relationships, and whether that's friends, lovers, whatever, being okay with walking away from something is a really hard thing to do. That's tough, especially when you invest part of who you are into the process. But as your story goes, when you do that with conviction, then you end out on the other side in a much better position than you were in before.
Yeah. I have people ask me, they're like, do you ever regret leaving the Navy? Because, I could have retired and stuff like that. I was like, no. I was like, I feel like everything happens for a reason, and I can't live in the past on, I should have did this, I should have, the decisions I've made are the decisions I've made, and I have to deal with the repercussions, good and bad. And me thinking, oh man, I should have stayed in the Navy, man, my life would be so much different. Or, oh man, I should have pursued firefighting. Look, I made the choice, and and now my life is the way it is. And that's okay. It's okay. We're not going to all make 100% right decisions all the time. You're going to make mistakes, but learning from those mistakes and learning from your successes are just as important. You know what I mean?
So when you were welding, or plumbing and welding, are you underwater? Like, you're an underwater welder?
No, that was the Navy divers. Okay, yeah, the Navy divers did that. Yeah, no. For me, it was all structural or pipe or something like that. I went through the Navy Advanced Welding School, got a Navy certification to be an advanced welder. So I got to do like pressure systems, pressure piping systems, a little bit of like nuclear systems, and stuff like that. So, and that was another thing. As I was getting out of the Navy, when I first got to my last duty station here, I was like, oh, I'm just gonna I'm just going to get out of my Navy uniform and come in civilian clothes doing the same job. And once again, there was a voice in the back of my head like, these guys get treated like garbage. Like they don't like. And so I just listened to that voice and I was like, I'm not going to do this. And once again, I guess it was the right choice.
We when my dad was out here, we toured the USS Midway, right?
Yeah.
It's the museum.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't do it, dude. I could not live. So my grandfather was Navy out of San Diego. My cousin was Navy out of San Diego. My grandfather was a U-boat guy. I don't think I deal with claustrophobia until I get into a situation like that. And I'm like, dude, out in the middle of the fucking Atlantic Ocean, shoulder to shoulder in this hallway, eating, food 4 levels down, working out 3 levels down, playing cards 1 level down. I just would feel so confined. Like, do you feel that ever, or does that go away?
Oh, no, I'm claustrophobic. So
how do you do it then?
I mean, jiu-jitsu. So before jiu-jitsu, my claustrophobia would get pretty bad sometimes. Even before firefighting, I remember the first time I put a firefighting mask on, the pressure against my face and like the restriction of the cup over my mouth and everything like that, dude, it was like hardcore anxiety. I was like, holy shit, like I'm gonna fucking pass out. And I would just sit there and, deep breaths. And it was at something like when my wife and I first got together, she would like lay on my chest and I'm like, look, you got to get off me. Like the blankets are too tight on my feet. You're laying on my chest. I got to sit up and I got to do some like some breathing in and out. And I think I still suffer from it, but I'm so much better at just like dealing with it and kind of like ignoring it, I guess you could say. Like it doesn't happen nearly as much, and I think it's because like exposure therapy, like I've just been exposed to uncomfortable situations so much, my mind is like, okay, this isn't so bad. I think we're good with this. Okay,
and were you on vessels, or were you always on?
I was on boats, and I remember one time I had an anxiety attack while I was in the Navy. I was sleeping in my rack, and you saw how small those racks are. My bed, tiny.
Bro, I thought these beds were like nice little living quarters.
No,
it's like a
sardines
prison
packed.
cell.
Yeah. And so I woke up to me banging against I was on the bottom rack, banging on the top of my rack, which is the bottom of the rack above me. Like I was in a fucking coffin, dude. And I just rolled out and I was like, like deep breath, like holy crap. Like heart was racing, dude. I couldn't even freaking believe it. But I don't have any other choice. I wanted to be in the Navy. And so I just, once again, just slowly building up a tolerance and just trying to tell myself, you got this. And slowly, now it takes a lot for me to have that feeling, by a lot. I say if blankets are too heavy on me or like I'm feeling restricted under a blanket, that still gets me till this day. I don't know why.
I'm going to die in here.
The feeling of not being able to escape still gets me in some situations, but no, it's something I dealt with. And over time, I've just kind of like pushed it to the back of my head or just slowly built a tolerance for it.
So basically, pressure pass, smother pass, use lapels on Travis. That's a great way to get him to freak out.
Don't do that, please.
For the record, have you toured the Midway?
Yeah.
The mannequin situation in that museum is by and large the creepiest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, so weird.
It's so weird. If you haven't done it, like if someone's listening and they haven't toured it and you need to tour it. It's the strangest thing. These mannequins are from like maybe the 60s, haven't been changed at all. And they pop out at you. Like you'll come around some corner in this corridor on like the 6th level of this ship. And bam, there's just this creepy ass mannequin staring you in the face. It became like a whole joke with my dad and I. We like his photo in my phone, like if he calls me, is this mannequin from inside that ship that we like.
That's so funny.
Couldn't get over. It was a pretty fun day. But
that's funny.
I don't know. I don't think I could live underground like that. And the fear of being sunk, even though that's statistically a wildly irrational fear in the U.S. Navy, but
I was on the surface. Luckily,
they had these pictures of these boilers that were being cleaned by hand by the sailors,
and
it had this placard next to it, and it was basically like, if you were a smaller guy in your, what's it called? Like your cadre, like your group of dudes.
Cadres?
Is that what?
Or
So
we usually called it like divisions or
yeah, okay. So if you're a small guy in your division, you're the only one that can fit in the boiler porthole.
Yes.
And so they would put these guys in there to go in and manually clean them. And I'm like, man, if I was, 18 years old, I was smaller than I am now, I would have been that dude. Can't do it.
Yeah.
100%
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. Agreed. I was a small guy, and they would put me in places where I was like, I fucking hate you people.
Yeah. You're like, I'm going to start a podcast one day, and I'm going to talk trash about all you guys. I hate you.
Yeah. So
Well, all right. Last little bit here before I let you go, because we're cruising. I knew that this would happen. When you have other podcasts on, it's so easy to just keep chatting because you're both conversationalists. But when you're Twitch streaming, what game were you playing?
Oh, dude, usually it was like Overwatch or like PUBG. Really anything I was just getting into. I love shooting games, so I was just typically playing a competitive shooting game, not being very competitive.
Is that so? I've always wondered about Twitch growth. It's an interesting thing to me because you can grow as a bad player, right? Or you can grow as a crazy, super talented, like shark.
Uh-huh.
But if you're like, okay, you can't, it's like you don't have anything to build your platform on. Like how do those people grow into these accounts that are making, like, some of these people are pulling in 7 figures a year streaming?
Oh yeah, easily.
And all
some
they're
of them
doing
pull in that month. You know what I mean? A month. So
what
I
is
think it's
it?
you got to have one or the other. Either, like you mentioned, either you have a big personality, and you're mediocre at video games, or you're exceptional at video games and an authority in the space or your game, and then people want to watch you for your skill, and you're a wet paper towel in a personality. You know what I mean? It's either or.
You're on mute.
Yeah. So it's either one of those, where I think a lot of people have issues is they think they're one or the other, and they're really not, and they're not honest with themselves. They have a boring personality, they're terrible at video games, and they sit there and they stream for 7-8 hours a day wondering why no one comes in and gives them money, or they're like, well, so and so does it, so I can do it. So I think that's the thing. And you have to be honest, you have to be genuine, or you have to have a really good character, like Dr. Disrespect. You have to, you know what I mean? Like,
that's the Warzone dude, right?
Yeah. So
with the red shades and the yeah, I've seen his stuff. I get fed his. I don't watch his content because I don't play Call of Duty anymore, but I get fed his content all the time, and I'm like, what's this mullet wearing, blades wearing guy? He's out here with several million people engaging with his content, and all he does is play Call of Duty 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day. It's crazy.
Yeah. So once you reach that level, then it's kind of like just maintaining it and not getting canceled for saying something stupid. So, but it took a lot of my time, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. And so when I got back from Japan, I stopped, and it's a lot harder to grow in that community than it is in podcasting. So,
well, hopefully the good vibes, the podcast continues to grow, continues to find its way, and have continued awesome guests on like you've been having. And I wish you all the best, and thank you for coming on, Travis. It's been a blast chatting for going on an hour and a half now, because we did have our technical help session before, which I have to give you immense credit for, because you overhauled a lot of technical issues that I've been putting off on the back
burner. I'm here, man. Whenever you need anything, just let me know. So, hey, but thanks, Abe, for having me. And I mean, we're going to be doing this again tomorrow for my show, but
indeed we are.
Yeah, but
Cat's
it was
out of the bag. I
didn't know if we were by the time this is out, you'll probably go listen to mine.
Yeah, that's right. I thought we were going to keep it a secret, but now you all know. No, man, I look forward to it. It's gonna be a blast to turn the tables and be on the other side.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you guys so much for listening. So I was almost going to do my outro.
No. I got my own. You stay back. Stay in your corner. I got my own outro. Stick around, folks. Listen to my outro. All right. Thanks a lot, Travis. I appreciate it.
Thanks, bud. Thanks.
Hey, friends. Abe here. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode and sticking around to the very end. If you want to support it, leave a 5-star review on Spotify or check out www.maynideapodcast.com, join the mailing list, and stay up to date on all things The Mayn Idea, from future guests, sponsorship opportunities, products that I'm using to help me perform at my best, invites to ask me anything, and any upcoming pertinent information to the show. I cannot do this show without you. It is literally why I show up each week and put these episodes together. So thank you from the bottom of my heart from being part of the community. I hope you have a great day.